everyone for joining us today. We have another amazing guest with us. So we have Sara Mittleider. And so Sara, we actually saw her recently. She was in Galway Downs in Temecula, kind of my home area. And so she does a lot of 3-day eventing. And so recently, like I said, she was in Galway. She has quite a bit under her belt. So it's amazing. She is the youngest rider ever to compete in the Rolex Kentucky 3-day event, which is a 4-star event, which if you don't know that, it's the highest level of international competition. So that's pretty amazing in itself. And she also won 9 national shows in a row on 3 different horses. So that's a novice and intermediate levels. So that's all 3-day eventing lingo for you. But so Sara's been out and about, and she's here to share some of her tips with us and how she became so successful. So Sara, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm so happy to have you. It was really cool. I got to see you in Galway because it was just in my backyard. So that was really cool. You were with La Paz, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about La Paz?
So La Paz, or Mookie, as we call him at home, I got him when he was at the end of his 4-year-old year. And he and I have been together now for almost 5 years, and just progressed him up through the levels myself with my team here at home, and now he's completed a CCI 4-star long.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So where did you get him? I know what about his breeding and stuff? Like, where did you get him, and what's his background?
He's registered as a Hungarian sport horse, and he is imported from Hungary. He is predominantly Self-Ronce and KWPN. He does have a little trotting blood back there as well, so he's a little bit of a mixed bag. But yeah, my dad and my husband, who is from Hungary, they went on a horse shopping trip.
Oh,
and he was in a group of horses and my dad really liked him, and so he got picked.
That's awesome. So your dad sounds like, he does a little bit of horse work too, or how did he just?
Yes, my dad is actually my coach. He's competed through the advanced level as well. He's been my coach my entire life.
Wow.
My family started with race horses, and then when I was about 7, they fully committed to doing 3-day eventing.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. That's really cool. It's in the family. And so you brought it even over to the US. Like, that's really cool. Was your dad, did he grow up in Hungary, or where?
No, my husband is from Hungary.
Okay.
My dad is from Idaho.
Oh.
Yeah, it's okay. And we've, they started out with breeding racehorses and training racehorses here in Idaho. But a friend of ours introduced 3-day eventing, because we actually had those shows in Idaho at the time. Mm-hmm. He really liked it, and so he started doing that with his off-the-track thoroughbreds.
How fun.
And it just has progressed from there.
That's awesome. And so then when your husband went to Hungary, and that breed stood out to you?
That horse in particular, my husband and my dad went specifically there on a horse shopping trip, just because at the time the exchange rate was so in our favor. And they picked out a few horses for clients as well. And then they all came over. And I think since that trip, a total of 20 horses have been imported throughout the States. Wow. From my husband's adventures over there.
That's awesome. So that's really cool. It's like a family event where you guys all work together with the horses. That's really cool.
Yes.
So, and you're in Idaho, and it looks like is it cold there right now?
It's getting there. It's not horrible because it's still sunny. But yes, winter is on its way.
It's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so tell me a little bit about your facility.
So we have about 20 acres, about 20 minutes south of Boise, mm-hmm. in a little town called Kuna. And we have pretty much everything here. We have a gallop track, we have cross country, we have a huge outdoor arena, we have an indoor arena, we have 2 barns and pastures for the horses. And yeah, we all live on property and make it work.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, I'm from Colorado originally. Like,
Okay.
it is nice to have an indoor when there's like weather happens and things like that. So I imagine that's a nice feature for sure to have that indoor arena. So, so just kind of going into it. So I know it sounds like you have several horses that you ride, but La Paz or Mookie, how many horses do you have on facility that you ride specifically?
So Mookie is my oldest at 9, and then I have Petrozato, who's a 7-year-old, who's quite an exciting horse as well. And then I have several 4-year-olds that are getting started in their careers. So.
Oh, cool. So you've got all different levels and keeps you active, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. Yes, it does.
So I'm sure, I mean, because the age difference and their different trainings, that you have different progressions with each one. So for example, like your 4-year-olds, what do you right now like focusing on, like getting them on, I mean, like, well, first off, like what are you training them for? Are you just getting them ready for?
Well, some will be 5 next year, some will just be 4. So they're getting started under saddle and understanding riders.
Okay.
And then the 4-year-olds that'll be 5, they work 4 to maybe 5 days a week, give and take. I'm usually not on them longer than 20 minutes. But I do progress them pretty quickly to doing little jumps under saddle. Mm-hmm. And then very basic flat work. But I mostly do a lot of just fitness training, getting them ready, especially the warm bloods, because they do take a lot longer. Yeah. You want to start early in their life to get them with that baseline fitness.
Right. And it takes, to maturity, that level, it takes a little longer, for sure. So that's really cool that you don't start them too soon and get them out there. One thing I have noticed in the industry is they do start them really early sometimes, and then it breaks them down quickly. So I think that's really cool that you wait till they're older and more mature and they're grown, for you to start riding and then things. So that's a really cool tip. So, so when you're riding, for example, the 5-year-olds, you say even the 4-year-olds to just like 20 minutes or so. What are you focusing on? I mean, you say fitness but like when you get on, like what's the routine that you would do for like your younger horses?
So my younger horses, I work that they can get comfortable with a contact. They don't have to go round, just that they can accept a contact. Mm-hmm. I do start fairly early to get straightness, especially the bigger warm bloods. It can take them quite a bit longer to get more even side to side. So I try to start that fairly soon in their concept. And then mostly just be able to go forward, because they're typically not a particularly hot breed. So just getting them comfortable. I do like to ride them out. This time of year I'm forced inside a lot of the time, but mostly I try to stay out in the open where it's a lot more encouraging to get them to stay forward on their own. Right.
And Idaho is so beautiful. I love Idaho. I mean, there's so many beautiful areas and pines and a lot to keep them going, just like the outdoors and wildlife and things like that. So I'm jealous. Everyone, wherever you live, you want to be somewhere else sometimes. But Idaho is gorgeous. So yeah. So with when you're riding and you're out in the field, for example, like that, keeping them more engaged going forward. So is that during your 20-minute process, or like how do you change your durations at all?
Yeah, it depends. So I'll pretty much map out what I have planned for them through the week. So I usually do, if they're in the 4-day-a-week program, then I usually just do 2 days that are teaching them something. And then the other 2 days are either a fitness training or a walk training, or maybe they just go on the lunge line, just to kind of not get too intense too early, because if they're going to make it to eventing horses, then they'll have an intense life later. I try to keep key.
Yeah, and so going into that, what specifically are you trying to avoid while going into an eventing, to have an eventing horse? You know, what exactly are you hoping to avoid by just starting them, you know, not going too hard in the beginning?
Well, a lot of them are quite big, and most of them, they're really bred to jump, and so they kind of already naturally want to do that. So I don't really have a necessity to jump them very big. I mostly just teach them how they can move their body and their feet. So they do a lot more gymnastic work, so that I don't have to be overly involved with my contact. And then as far as the flat work goes, just very, very basic, straight, bend, go forward, stop. I don't try to do too much lateral movement or collected work or anything like that. I try to save that more towards the end of their 5-year-old year.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, just that forward momentum, just getting them forward. That's okay. Cool. I'm just trying to kind of figure out exactly how your routine goes. So that's really cool. So for example, like La Paz or Mookie, so that's a whole nother story where they've all, you know, he's already been out and experienced and jumping. And so what would a day look like just starting with Mookie?
So a day with Mookie would be, in the summertime, he doesn't get as much field time as he would like because he gets fat very easily. He's a super easy keeper. So I usually do a morning ride on him. It varies if I do just walk trot, and he goes twice a day when he's working to get fit. So it's always, one ride will be a long walk, 45 minutes at the minimum, and then the second ride will be an actual work. When I'm working him, I still try to keep it no longer than 45 minutes, and I make sure to give him walk breaks, and I really keep an eye on my watch to make sure I don't get stuck in the grind, and I give him his breaks.
Yeah.
So he is usually 2 days a week dressage training, one cavaletti or jump training, and then the other are fitness. He does long trots, or he does a gallop, or he goes swimming. So yeah.
That's great. So that's really interesting how you have it broken down into different days and routines and things like that. I mean, that's really important to have a structure, so you have a goal, you know, to make sure you meet that goal. And clearly from your awards and what you've accomplished, that it's working. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
So where do you go swimming? Where do you have them do the tread? There's like a treadmill, or do you?
It is a treadmill. I do like the treadmill versus actual swimming, because they bow the wrong way when they're swimming. It's just a personal preference. So it's about an hour away from here. Yeah, it's a thoroughbred training center, and the guys there are amazing, and I really trust them that if anything were to happen, they can get in there and get things done. But yeah, I go there, and my horse will go on their walker for about 15 minutes as a warm up, and then he goes into the treadmill, and then he cools down in their walker again afterwards.
That's really cool. So I mean, just to have access to that's awesome. But you go an hour to go there, so you're really dedicated. That's really cool to hear. Yeah. So, and that's interesting that you're mentioning like how they bow differently, like how they swim, and like in the treadmill they can change the levels of the water, so you can, you know, have it affect the body differently. So that's really cool that you have access to that. So just thinking about like Mookie and things like that. So I mean, you clearly have a breakdown schedule. Let's just say it's like an off day for him or something, or it's like a new new technique that you're trying to teach him, or some sort of new, something that's new to him, like a hurdle, for example.
Right.
How do you go about helping him overcome that problem?
Well, I mean, like with people, if he comes out and it's like, wow, his body is just not going to do this today, then I'll flip my days and I'll make that a long trot, or maybe he just walks that day. Mm-hmm. And then I think about what I can do. So sometimes if I go, wow, his body just really needs a break, then I'll actually just put him in a lunging rig the next day, like a neck stretcher or something, and just let him stretch his body with no weight on him. And then I'll try again the next day. And that has been successful so far. But if it's just a mental block, then I let him walk, and I just try to break it down to a little bit different way to come at him a little bit, and just try to help him through it. But, there's always that line. You don't want to let him get away with something just because it's hard, but at the same time, I don't want him to get frustrated because it's hard. So there's a lot of in the moment flexibility you have to have when you do this sport, especially once the animals get fit, because there's no way you'll ever get them tired.
You're gonna win that war.
So you have to be willing to be a little clever.
Yeah, and I think it's good for people to hear that, because clearly, you've done a great job with your successes, and to know that you have a conversation with your horse about, like, if they're not having a good day, like, you're open to, like, having that discussion with them versus, like, this is how it is, like, it's happening, Yeah. So I think some people, it's good to hear, like, not every day's perfect, and
it's definitely perfect.
So it's good for people to hear, it's not always like that. And not that I would say breakdowns, but it's just the progression of how you become successful.
Yeah.
If you were to, for like an example or a tip that you would recommend to someone like starting out, what would be like your number one recommendation that you wish you knew? Like when you first, your dad's really helped you, it sounds like, but learning like this whole process and going through like all the different competitions, like what's like one thing that you really think is like the biggest tip, like that you could share?
I think the biggest thing that I've witnessed throughout my career is people not sticking in a program. It's hard and you have to be flexible. And if you're in a program that can be successful, but you have those hard days, then people are willing to just jump ship and go to somebody who's going to tell them exactly what they want to hear. And, or they jump around, they ride with this trainer, they ride with that clinician. It's a lot of jumping around, and that's very confusing for your horse, because this is such an eclectic sport that you can, even though we're all trying to achieve the same thing, there are so many pathways to get there. But horses are such animals of routine, and if you take a different path every time you communicate, they get very frustrated with that. So it's not that I'm against riding with different people, because that can be super helpful, but to have a baseline of a program under your belt that you can be comfortable and confident enough to build off of.
Yeah. And even just finishing strong, like you committed to that program.
Yeah.
And just commitment. So, and like you said, the routine for your horse, like that's important. It's like, yes. I can see how that would be very beneficial for them, even if, you don't agree with that time, or you want to hear something different, like just finishing what you started.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that. It's really cool. So that's a really big tip, really, just like finish what you started, and, and routine for your horse. So not even just the training, but I bet that you can put that into even any communication with your horse, like you said, if you talk to them differently, they're going to get frustrated when you're asking them multiple ways for the same thing. different every time, you're going to get different results and wanting the same answer. So yeah, that's important. I think that's really cool. Yeah, so I mean that was a huge tip. I'm thinking, is there anything else that like just a theme of like maybe like in a year's course, like do seasons make a difference for your training or anything like that?
So kind of what drives the training a little bit is there's an end goal, so like a competition, and then I work back systematically from that goal in my calendar to where I'm at now, and then just kind of build my horse up to where he's going to peak at that particular goal. Every horse is different, and everybody wants to go about it a little bit differently, so you kind of have to play with what works for you. And honestly, experience is what's going to,
right,
trial and error a little bit is going to help you along your way. But also just having access to people who have that experience, maybe more than what you have currently, to help you map that out.
Yeah, so it sounds like, I mean, because your dad's really helping you and your husband is as well. It sounds like you have a team surrounding you that helps you move forward too. Like you're not just doing this alone. You have a team that's helping you.
Absolutely. And anybody that thinks they're doing it alone, they need to open their minds up a little bit, because you cannot do this sport by yourself. There's a lot of behind the scenes things, your vets, your farriers, your friends, your support crew. They make a huge difference. And I've been very fortunate within the last 2 years of building an amazing team behind these horses to get them to where they can do this and be happy. It really, it's unbelievable how much that will make a difference. And you don't quite realize it until everybody kind of falls into place. And it's like, wow, this is so much better.
Yeah, and you can appreciate it.
Yeah.
And look back and see like how much teamwork and just the mentality, like just having everyone on the same page and like a team moving forward, like can really just drive you. Yeah, I think that's really important too. I think that's a huge part to this, and people just see the rider and the horse during the competition, and yet they don't see the whole team that's behind it.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. How are you, like, I mean, like you're saying, of course, like family and friends, but like picking people to be on your team. How are you, like, how have you built your team?
It takes a long time because you can have people that will act like they're supporting you, especially if you're doing well. And then, it's inevitable that the wheel will go back to the bottom once you've been on top, and those people will
scatter.
Yeah, they either leave or they become very negative, and you've got to get rid of them because it does not help. And it can be really, really hard because they can be people you really thought were 100% in your corner, but when you finally let them go, you start to breathe a little bit, and it's like, oh wow, that really takes a lot of weight and a lot of pressure off, and then it leaves room for true people to come in. And yeah, it's been a process, and it ebbs and flows just like life, but I'm very, very fortunate and very ecstatic with the people that are around me today.
That's awesome. And because you're just mentioning this, it just comes into my head. I just read this book that they were talking about how it was by a football player. I can't think of his name right now. I'm not too into football, but he was a football player, and he was explaining like cheering, like fans will come, like, and they're cheering like when he's at the top of his game, and then like when he had to have surgery, like, no one was there to cheer him on. That's when you need cheering. That's when you need your team, is when you're down, or like you said, and you're on your peak, and then at some point, like, you're going to go back down and you do the rotation. Like, that's when you need the support, is when you're not at your top. So I think that's really, I just kind of put those two together. I was like, like how you work and with your team, and you just got to get rid of that negative. energy and
Yeah.
just keep moving forward. So that's really cool that you have a great team with you. That's awesome. So I know it takes some time too to like find the authentic people who are like on your side.
Yeah. And just like with horses, you have to find what matches with you. You know, everybody has a certain type of horse they get along with a little bit better. You might as well try to stick with that because it makes the hard times a little bit easier versus a horse that you maybe don't quite like or enjoy as much. Yeah, and it's the same with people. You really just should have people you genuinely like and the right type of personality and mentality that will fit with you.
Right, and kind of just jive and go together
Yeah.
at that point too. So I know it sounds like your dad worked with thoroughbreds. Are all your horses Hungarian? Like,
No, they're very, I have a wide range. I'm not stuck on any particular breed. I do have a type of horse that I quite like, which does tend to be a little bit more towards a thoroughbred type. Even though La Paz physically doesn't match that description, mentally he does. He is a hot and a sensitive kind of horse, and I do enjoy that. That's what I grew up riding. So that fits my style and my personality quite well. Right now, I seem to have a variety of sizes. I have one that's like, I think she's maybe 15 hands. And then I have one that's 16.3. So again, I'm not stuck on a particular size or breed, but they all do seem to have the same personality, which I mesh with quite well.
oh, that's really interesting. So you really feel like, I'm just kind of gathering what you're saying. So you're like, the personality is really important to you for you to really make that connection.
Yes. Yeah. I would agree.
That's really cool. Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't matter what breed, it's just that type of, you just jive well with. That's interesting. I think that's really fascinating. Yeah, so I'm just trying to think, gosh, I could ask you so many questions, but we only have 30 minutes. So I'm trying to think, could you share already like a big tip, like your biggest tip that people would love? Is there anything else that you can think of that's like, for maybe even just necessarily eventing, but just people who are riding horses, like to build a better relationship, and if they're especially in sports or anything, is there anything that you would recommend that would help them just move forward? Like if they could just implement it today, like that would make it a better.
I would say to not be afraid of trying another day. I mean, there's always another day, and when you hit a plateau, which is completely normal, and it's just not, you feel like, holy cow, nothing I can do today is right, or I can't ride, or my horse is just not here. They happen, and it's not a failure, and it's not a loss of time, that you can actually progress further if you just take a breath, go enjoy a nice hack, and try again another day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it's all related to what you were saying about just like you have a goal, like you have a competition, for example, and you're setting up your program of like how you want to progress. You're focused on that, and then and you move forward. You implement just focused energy to make that happen. So
yeah, we have a saying here of plan, don't plan when it comes to horses. So you have to plan, but you have to be really flexible with that.
Yeah, but an open plan. Plan to not have a plan.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And time too. I mean, that's a big thing too. It's like you have to have patience and
a lot of patience.
Time work on that. So really cool. Well, I mean, I'm just trying to think, is there anything else that you would love to share with people? That was a great tip too. Gosh, I mean, just, plateauing and people, that happens all the time. Like when competition and you're like, what's going on? Is it me or the horse? And just focus on like just pushing through, and tomorrow is another day, but just focusing on moving forward, So is there anything else that you would recommend for anyone? I know you have a great routine going on, just like scheduling and things like that. Is there anything in your routine that you've noticed as like a great tip that's like, oh, I'm really glad I do that like in my routine?
Actually, yeah, a big thing that I do, especially before a major competition, is I have a set of riders that I quite admire. And I enjoy watching a lot of, and to get myself into a good mentality heading into a big show, I YouTube really a lot of how they do their warm-ups actually for actual competition versus the training side. I do watch a lot of training videos. I'm a big visual learner, and so I try to stick with riders that I feel are either on the type of horses I'm currently riding, or a program that I aspire to emulate a little bit. But I do watch a lot of how they warm up for each phase and prepare their horses for the actual show itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you said, like you aren't just watching like just any warm up. I mean, it's like specific to the horse's personality and your training techniques, because I can see how that would be really beneficial, just seeing how other people are doing it.
Yeah.
And just the warm up. Yeah, just seeing and implementing that. That's really interesting. So yeah, well, Sara, gosh, we covered a lot of stuff just in the 30 minutes that we had. Before we call it a day, is there anything else that you want to mention?
Just thank you very much for having me. This was fun.
Oh, thanks. Well, of course, I appreciate you. It's you. We really appreciate having over. So, I mean, that's a huge tips, and I think that you can implement that even today. Like all those things that you really just said, like you can just put them into play today. So, really, thank you for joining us because we wouldn't have had those tips today if we didn't have you here. So, yeah, and then when are you going to be, you're not coming to California anytime soon?
No, probably not until maybe February at the earliest, but it'll be a little bit weather dependent on that. But yeah, we typically do go down and stay for a little bit in between shows when the season starts back up.
Nice. Well, that's cool. Well, I'll have to reach out to you then when you're back in town.
Yeah, please do.
All right, Sara. Well, thank you again so much. And we'll be talking soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.